Well, good morning and welcome back to Elevenses. It's Wednesday, the 27th of March today. May. Just shows how long we've been stuck in lockdown. I can't even remember what month it is. Right, okay, you're watching Kevin Williams with the live webcast. And I'm bringing you some topical news, some controversial views, and some biking tips on this show. So over the next 30 minutes or so, what have I got for you? Well, the first thing is I've got some news from around the world. Norton's hiring. BMF are telling bikers to keep it quiet. Bajaj, the Indian manufacturer, teasing us with a 400cc sports bike. Times writer finds motorbike is the solution for her journey. The plug-in grant for electric vehicles has been extended for a year. The IAM believe that we're looking at a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change transport infrastructure. And I'll also tell you about the REV online conference in a moment too. But first of all, just to let you know what's going on in the world out there and what I'm up to. Let me just get the relevant picky up. It was this one here, wasn't it? It wasn't. It was that one there. Back to biking. I'm looking at relaunching my training courses on the 1st of June, at least in one fashion or another. The rules as they have been applied to businesses have always allowed people to work if they haven't been able to work from home. And arguably, I could have said that I wasn't able to work from home, but quite frankly, I couldn't really justify that I was running an essential service. So I shut down somewhat actually in advance of the lockdown, but I shut down the service, my training courses, and this is why we're doing something online. Now, as the rules have changed, on the 1st of June, businesses which conduct their goings-on in the open air will be allowed to resume as long as they can show that they've taken steps to comply with government instructions on what's safe. Now, I'm pretty sure that motorcycling is fairly low risk. We do our riding obviously out in the open air. Motorcycle training is slightly different because we do some instruction that does require being in contact. So what I'm actually looking at doing is moving a lot of my instruction online. So there will be a mix of practical road riding, but we'll also be doing briefings, and some of the theory work that I would normally do on the road, we'll do it online using with videos, web streaming, that kind of thing. So it's going to be a different experience, and so it's going to demand some flexibility from trainees. I think it's an exciting opportunity for all of us, but essentially what that means is from the 1st of June, I will be sort of going through a limited relaunch of my training. Initially, as I've been talking about, I anticipate that there will be a lot of people moving on to motorcycles to get to work. That could include electric motorcycles. Well, I am going to prioritize people of that kind who want some help with their sort of commuting. Being based in London, I'm ideally suited for that. So if you know anybody who is going to be getting on two wheels to get to work, or if you yourself that applies to you, drop me a line and I will do my best to sort you out. So look for my back to biking sessions on the internet on my website, survivalskills.co.uk, and take a look at the Ride to Work courses specifically. Other courses will be available, but as I say, I will be prioritizing people who want to ride to work initially at least. So, okay, that's what I'm up to. What else have we got to talk about? Well, as I said, there's some good news in these rather troubling times for Norton. They're hiring again. Now, after all the reports of the financial improprieties over the last few months, it's great to see that Norton, under their new owners, TVS, the Indian company, are going ahead with their plans to invest and to expand the UK-based business. And what they're doing is actually advertising jobs for engineers and managers. Norton, under the previous owner, Stuart Garner, had only 55 employees, and they made just one bike a week. Now, currently, that with a backlog of some 500 bikes that are ordered and at least partially paid for, that would take them 10 years to work their way through. So obviously, the old rate of production needs to go up quite dramatically to get rid of that backlog before they can actually get into manufacturing new bikes to sell and make some money. So I suspect that there will be a fairly dramatic upturn in the number of motorcycles that they're producing, even though they're talking about sort of remaining as a sort of boutique manufacturer, is the truly dreadful term that's being bandied around. Okay, what else have we got? Well, bikers are in the dock again. This time it's the BMF pointing the finger. In a statement, they say that they've received complaints from the public all over the country. What they go on to say is that because of the lockdown, many people are at home, either working there or they're involuntarily idle. And not surprisingly, because of the perfect weather, they've been out in the open air in gardens and things. Unfortunately, motorcyclists are also taking advantage of the lockdown, and again, it's not unreasonable to go out on the bike. It's allowed under the rules. We've been through all that, but what's happening, of course, is that there are bikes that are creating a lot of noise. What the BMF says basically is that we have to respect the right of other citizens to have some peace and quiet. And what they recommend is that riders only use bikes with OEM exhausts or replacements which meet the noise standards. And they say we should not tamper with intake systems in such a way as to increase intake noise. Seems to be a little bit of a confusion there between exhaust and intake. Intake does make a racket if you remove the standard filters, but most of the noise from motorcycles comes from exhausts. So it's the exhaust system which matters, not so much the intake. But basically, one of the things they're saying is don't ride at elevated revs through residential areas. And I had this out with a trainee some years ago who'd been told that she should keep the bike at peak torque at all times, which meant that she was riding through villages in first gear. And although she had a road legal exhaust on the bike, it was a rather loud Yamaha R6, and it was surprisingly noisy, particularly as she was doing about 7,000 RPM in first at 30 miles an hour. So get up the gearbox and use a low gear, keep the noise down. BMF say that, quite frankly, if people find themselves unable to comply with this request, perhaps they should reconsider their membership of the BMF. Well, that's a bit extreme, but the message is there. Don't upset people. Everybody's an ambassador for motorcycling at the moment, and it's a particularly sensitive time. Right, okay, what about small motorcycles? Now, again, I've talked a lot about how people may be switching to smaller bikes for commuting purposes. So how about something made in India? Now, let me get the picture up for you, if I can find it. There it is. It's made by the Indian company Bajaj. And it'll be the biggest machine in the Bajaj lineup. It's based on a newly released model called the Dominar. It's a 400cc, and although this sports bike fared version only appears in rumour form at the moment, it does look like it's going to appear. The photo is actually the 200cc version of their sports bike. The machine that it's based on, the Dominar, is fitted with radial mounted front disc. It's got twin channel ABS on the upside down forks, and under the sporty looking fairing on the 200 are LED headlights, so we expect to see those on the 400 too. At the heart of the bike is actually a single cylinder 373cc engine. It's apparently a triple spark motor, so that presumably implies 3 spark plugs, which is probably more than most people would expect to find on a single cylinder bike. But the motor pumps out about 40 horsepower and 37 newton meters of torque, so it's a fairly punchy little engine. Okay, so you may be dismissing it because it's Indian, and bikes from the East haven't had a great reputation for reliability, but it's actually pretty much the same motor that you'd find in the 390 KTM Duke, and that's a bike which has gained a good solid following. The motor in that is good for 60 in around 7 seconds, so it's no slouch, and it's perfectly adequate for sort of middle distance commuting purposes. I might not want to ride down to the south of France on it, but I undoubtedly could do it. I've done it on an XBR 500 with about the same horsepower. Where's it going? Well, as new, probably the first market will be Indonesia, because Indonesia is absolutely booming as a motorcycle market. It'll probably go there even before it goes to India. Now, Bajaj don't have a dealer network in this country, you probably noticed. Although if there is a big shift towards smaller, less expensive machines, I didn't say it could happen, it might. But more likely, I would have thought, is that a future machine will be built by a European manufacturer with whom Bajaj have links. Now, I've just mentioned that they've had a long-standing partnership with KTM to build their baby single-cylinder bikes, but less well known is that they've also signed a deal with Triumph. Now, Triumph, for some while, have been working on a small single-cylinder machine, and we've been, sort of teased with photos of that snapped out on the road in test format for the last 5 or so years, but the bike has never appeared. So just possibly, pure speculation on my part, this could be the basis for a new small capacity trumpet. Okay, so don't forget you're watching Elevenses here, live with Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. Just a reminder that my training courses will be reopening on the 1st of June in a limited way, so go over to the website www.survivalskills.co.uk and have a look to see what I'm doing. I've just updated the website yesterday at some length to give you a better idea of what's going on. So, okay, next story. There was an interesting little item in the Times the other day which got me thinking. Now, I don't know about you, but I do get a bit tired of the relentless barrage of propaganda from the pro cycling lobby. Now, I use the word propaganda advisedly. Propaganda is information which is usually of a biased or misleading nature, which is used to promote a political cause or a point of view. Now, I use it for 2 reasons. Firstly, because the pro cyclists often treat anything that suggests there are genuine alternatives to cycling as propaganda against cycling. And secondly, because, quite frankly, the cycling lobby also over-eggs the benefits of cycling on many occasions. So probably upsets any cyclist watching, but hey ho, this is my opinion and I'm entitled to it. The thing is, I think we need to take, as always, a balanced view, and there must be room for all forms of transport to coexist. And in these unusual times, it's even more important that we don't retreat behind well-rehearsed verbal walls, but we genuinely explore other options. Now, I'm not saying that the motorcycle industry is entirely free from spreading its own propaganda. We've all seen unsubstantiated and unsupportable statements about how motorcycles are greener than cars. No, they're not. They produce dirtier, nastier fumes. And when people say they're also more economical, well, it depends what kind of motorcycle you look at. If you are comparing a 1000cc V twin with a 1000cc car, the car will win hands down on fuel consumption. Only small motorcycles can compete with small cc engined cars. So I was quite interested to see a story that was written in the Times the other day by somebody called Hilary Rose. Now, she started by saying, I really don't want to commute on a motorbike. And then there was a nice picture there of her standing next to her new motorcycle. So to cut the story short, what she actually said was that when she started to work in London 25 years ago, she was able to drive because there was a free car park at work, the congestion charge didn't exist, and she had a nice cheap to run diesel. You'll remember that not too many years ago, that was what the government was encouraging everybody to drive because it was seen as a clean option. Right, it's time for a sip of tea. And then, of course, the congestion charge came along. Diesel prices, diesel was discouraged by putting the price of diesel up over the price of petrol. And what she did was, along with other people, she switched to using the tube to get to work. But the question is, what does she do now? When, as she puts it, thanks to COVID-19, the tube is now toxic. Well, I certainly wouldn't want to be travelling on the tube to work at the moment. And she goes on in the article to explain that she's got a fairly standard 6-mile commute. Now, that's a pretty average kind of distance across London. Where I live is about 7 miles from the centre of London. So, you know, again, it's a fairly, she's a typical residential distance out of central London. So the first thing we can dispose of is the walking option. Even if you are a fairly brisk walker, you're looking at about 90 minutes each way. You know, and quite frankly, an hour and a half out of your day walking to and from work, it might suit a few people, but for the vast majority, it's taking a big chunk of usable time out of the day, however fit it keeps you. So I don't think I would want to be walking. And in any case, who wants to pound the miles along a busy city street? It's certainly not the tens of thousands of people who've been flocking to the countryside in recent days. So what else can we use? Well, there's buses, but again, until you actually try getting anywhere on the bus, you'll find that they are sometimes very slow and very complicated. It happens to be that you live on a bus route that goes from your front door to where you want to go, fine, no problem at all, you can jump on a bus. But in many cases, the route is actually crisscross and it's not easy. She says it would take days, which is a bit of an exaggeration, but I do know what she means. And of course, there's still that problem that you're in close proximity to strangers. So what about cycling? Well, she actually tried the route. She decided that cycling wasn't on, and she ended up with the motorcycle which the article photographs her standing next to. Now, so at this point, there'll no doubt be some of the pro-cycling lobby holding their heads in horror, but 6 miles it is potential cycling distance, but it's not for everyone. On the flat, it's not much of a challenge, but a little story from my past. 10 years ago, I started a new job. About 10 years ago, just after I left school, 10 miles from home. So I was reasonably fit from lots of football and cricket, and I reckoned I could cycle it in about 30 minutes. So out I went with that and bought a bicycle with my an advance on my first wage packet from mum and dad. And I'd reckoned without the topography because there was a whacking great hill in the way. And even though I was reasonably fit, as I say, after a month, I gave up and started using the train instead. Fitness wasn't the factor, it was actually the bike. Now, you can get a bicycle for peanuts. But once I discovered some years later, when I got back into some moderately serious cycling, you'd probably laugh, but at one point I was fit enough and keen enough to be tackling the climbs on the Tour de France route, a couple of hours ahead of the race. I discovered that a quality cycle isn't actually all that inexpensive. My old bike was brought out of the garage and equally quickly condemned to the scrap heap. As my brother put it at the time, it was a cheap and not very cheerful gas pipe special, i.e. the steel frame weighed a ton. So it was okay for a short distance, it was okay on flat roads, but even for a modest challenge, it was a real liability. The problem with a lot of the cheaper cycles is weight. They don't have particularly good brakes. The weight, the gears are often not very high quality either and don't shift well or cleanly. The weight, and you'll find that things like the bars and the seat are not particularly well designed. The seat can be particularly uncomfortable. And in case I didn't mention it already, the weight, and that's where the gas pipe comes in. So what do you actually pay for a reasonable bike? If you've not actually investigated, you might be surprised. I had a quick trawl on the net and find a cyclist review of their top commuter bikes. It was dated just a few days ago, last week, and their price range for their choices ranged from £700 to £1,500. And the thing is, you think about that, you're firmly into used 125 territory there. Even some new bikes aren't much more expensive than the £1,500 that they're suggesting. And, there are pricier bikes still. So our cyclists will then point to the extras you need to ride a motorcycle: CBT, insurance, compulsory helmet, bike clothing, and all the rest. But CBT aside, you're probably going to need those to go cycling too. You'll need at least some riding kit. A decent helmet and a pair of decent cycling gloves would be on my list. You don't not bang your head or put your hands up when you fall off just because you don't have an engine. You're just as much at risk from a low-speed crash as a motorcyclist is. So I would say that insurance is the big question to consider. One of the cycling bodies has actually started providing commuter cover to cyclists precisely for this reason. A well-publicised case a couple of years ago ended up bankrupting an uninsured cyclist after he hit a pedestrian, and she made a claim for personal injury, and he lost his defence, and the court found against him, and some hefty damages were awarded. So realistically, you need insurance on a bike too. And then you start needing all the essential extras added to the average cycle. Here's something that you probably haven't thought about, and it's certainly not something I've ever seen the pro cycling lobby talk about when extolling the benefits of bicycle. If you buy a road-going motorcycle, it comes with lights. Show me a bicycle that comes with a fully equipped with a set of adequate lights to go nighttime riding in bad weather. And I'm not talking here about the cheap flashy LEDs. They're okay-ish if you just want to be seen on a city street and if the batteries aren't too flat. But if you want to go out and ride in the dark, particularly on an unlit road, and absolutely on an unlit road in poor riding conditions where there are other vehicles coming towards you and behind you, you absolutely need decent lights. And they are an add-on. They're not actually on the bike. And decent set doesn't come cheap. A typical rechargeable, high-powered set of bicycle lights will put £100 plus dent in your credit card. More if you want more lights, obviously. And the other thing that, when you turn the ignition on the bike and start it up, the lights just work. You don't have to worry about them. But bicycle lights do need recharging. So you do need to take them off or take the power pack out, whatever it is, and get them recharged. Dynamos. I hear somebody mention dynamos in the background. Well, you can get dynamo lights, and they're not too bad if you're pedaling on the flat. But I will say from personal experience, the light output is pretty awful. They haven't got any better from that perspective, really. Try pedaling up a steep hill and then flick the dynamo on, and you'll discover how much extra work you're also creating. Yes, great for keeping fit, but not good for arriving in sort of anything other than a puddle of sweat at work. And then you need something to carry your stuff in. Now, that could be anything from a laptop to a complete change of clothes. You could, of course, do what a lot of motorcyclists do, which is just cycle with a bag on the back. So plenty of cyclists do that. But if you decide that not, then you'll need a luggage rack of some sort to attach some luggage to. Now, unlike a motorcycle, there's no back seat where you can simply strap a bag. So few cycles come with luggage racks as standard. So you'll need to cough up anything from 50 to 200 pounds to actually mount a rack to your bike. Costs are starting to add up, aren't they? And then we still haven't got anything to hang on those luggage racks to put the kit in. Now, again, you might be expecting that you could get panniers for a bicycle for as cheap as chips. And yes, you certainly can get some inexpensive ones. But if you want something robust and waterproof, then expect to pay the same sort of prices you would expect be paying for panniers on a motorcycle. Again, I looked up a review to see what the options were, and I found that the reviewers' best buy were almost £400 for two panniers, and their top pick was over 800. That's just for a pair of saddlebags for a bicycle. All of a sudden, our cheap cycling option has hit the same kind of price bracket as a small motorcycle. So I'm sure a lot of people will be doing exactly what Hillary did, which was to look at the options, do the sums, times, distance, cost, and weigh up the pros and cons. And what I'm getting at really is that this isn't an either or option, no matter how much the pro cycling lobby does seem to make it seem that way from at times. There are roles for all forms of public transport: personal, public, powered, unpowered, walking, e-scooters, dare I say it, cycling, motorcycling, and even cars. So let's just finish off with a bit of a factoid. The Netherlands is often held up as the example par excellence of a country which is adapted to bicycles, and you certainly will see a lot of bicycles in the Netherlands, even down in that hilly corner that they have down in the southeast that very few people know about. But did you know that the car ownership right now in the Netherlands is the highest it's ever been? Nope, neither did I. So what that basically shows is that the cycle doesn't replace car and powered transport generally, but it's our usage which can change. So have a think about all that. Now, don't forget, if you want to read something, you can come over to my survival skills site and pick up a book. The website has been under reconstruction and they made a right dog's dinner of it, but I think it's working again now. Right, okay, so something else I wanted to talk about briefly is the electric vehicle grant and what's going on there. The budget was 2 months ago, just before lockdown, and there are a couple of things that are worth knowing about if you're interested in electric vehicles. The first thing was that there was an incentive package of £532 million, which breaks down into 403 million for plug-in car grants, and a further 129.5, which covers bikes, taxis, and motorcycles. Basically, what that does is it provides a cash injection when a new vehicle is purchased, and exactly how much will depend on the vehicle being purchased. But basically, if you buy something like the Zeros I test rode last year, then you can claim back, I think it's £1,500 on a purchase price. And whilst those bikes are still expensive, the economies of scale as they ramp up production will bring costs down. So hopefully over the next year, it may give people a push that they need to get into electric motorcycles. There are still a lot of concerns about the adoption of electric motorcycles and electric cars generally. Range anxiety, as it's known, is probably the greatest. We all need to be able to recharge our electric vehicles quickly and easily. That's the one area they cannot compete with petrol engines at the moment. We really don't want to be stranded halfway between filling stations, as it were. The only way that we can do that is by making systematic changes to the transport infrastructure, and that's something that the government is addressing. George Freeman, MP, Department of Transport, Minister of State, was talking at the launch of a report into the transition to an electric-powered future, and he said we need to think about the balance between following where the uptake of electric cars is and reassuring tomorrow's purchases that we're building for them. And basically what that meant was a £500 million injection in support of new fast charging stations to go in over the next 5 years. And the aim is to eventually have a charging station within 30 miles of any electric car or bike. So basically, we are going to be heading towards an electric future. The only question is how soon and how quickly. I'm running out of time again. I've got more than I thought I had. I'm going to have to bring forward the final item and leave out the IAM statement for a second show. Right. Okay. So don't forget, you can set a reminder. Although I've cut out the Monday show for the time being, for the foreseeable future, I will be running Elevenses on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. I may have to shift the time around a little if I get training courses, but I will let you know as and when that's needed. Right, okay, so final item. I just want to announce a very special opportunity for all motorcyclists, and I'll put the link to this up at the end of the show. We've all got used to attending online video calls, probably for work for some of us, and certainly for most of us to stay in touch with friends and family. I've certainly been using video calls a lot. So the idea of an online biking event won't seem nearly as unlikely as it would have done just 3 months ago. So the Rev conference online is going to be a series of 15 live webinars delivered by 25 industry professionals from all backgrounds over the course of 2 days. And how do you attend? Well, if you've got a phone or a tablet or a laptop, you've got everything you need. You just log in and sit down and watch. You'll be able to catch up with some big names in motorcycling as they talk you through their specialities. And I'm intrigued to see that one of the speakers is going to be Lee Parks of Total Control. You'll also be able to catch up with my Shiny Side Up co-presenters, Dave Moss, Chris Hurren, and Brittany Morrow. Brittany is one of the organisers. They're all speaking, and along with some names from the US I don't know, such as Wendy Crockett and Erin Sills, who I'll be interested to hear talk. I'm looking forward to getting some new views on motorcycling. I'm always up for new ideas here. The cost for this is $20. But anyone who uses the code ROADRASH, one word, will get a 20% off their registration. So basically, that's a way to basically see what the motorcycling community itself is doing without having to wait for official bodies to do it for us. It's basically a bunch of bikers who are all getting together to talk to other bikers. So come over to revtalks.com, that's REVV talks.com. And again, I'll put the link up in a moment to see the full lineup and to register. The date is the June the 5th, June 6th, 2020. Don't forget it will be US time. So for those of us who are operating some hours behind, we're ahead, aren't we? So of course we are. Recordings will be available if you can't make the live webinars. And just in case I forgot to mention it, I will be on the speaker list myself. So hopefully see some of you over there. All right, okay, so that's it for today. Don't forget, just to remind you, if you can support me over at coffee.com, you'll gain access to over 100 items on better biking. Some of my back catalogue from Facebook is going up over there. I'm putting more up all the time. Been a bit sidetracked by getting my training courses organised ready for next week. Over the last couple of days, but I will be putting some up shortly. And if you become a monthly subscriber, you'll also get access to the theory content of my Performance Bends course as well. So there's plenty to see and read and look at over on coffee.com. Okay, so thank you very much indeed. I'll be putting this webcast up on YouTube as I normally do. It'll also go up on Coffee. And of course, you can catch up with it if you missed the beginning here on Facebook too. So again, once again, thanks for watching. I'll be back on Friday and I'll try and get that IAM item in. So again, bye for now.